They told you that discipline was everything, that rising early, enduring discomfort and clinging to routines no matter how you felt was the key to greatness. They promised that if you stayed focused long enough, your moment would arrive, and you bought into it. You forced yourself to remain consistent, to follow the system, to silence the lazy voice inside your mind. You called it strength, you called it discipline, but Machiavelli would call it something else entirely. He would call it loyalty to a framework never built for your supremacy. Here's the harsh truth. Discipline makes you easy to predict. And in a world where power favors the erratic, the adaptable, the strategically merciless, discipline isn't power, it's a collar. If you aim to be formidable, unstoppable, untouchable, Machiavelli would advise one thing: stop clinging to discipline. Start mastering strategy. Discipline is only admirable when you're the one dictating the game. But most people aren't. They're disciplined within boundaries drawn by others. They rise early not because it sharpens them, but because some guide claimed that's what the successful do. They toil on tasks they despise not because it builds dominance, but because discipline told them to finish what they began. They follow rituals like dogma, never pausing to question if those habits still serve their goals. Machiavelli would scoff, because for him, consistency without cause is weakness. There's nothing noble about chasing a plan that no longer works. There's no virtue in following a code that brings no influence. That's not discipline, that's mental servitude dressed as personal growth. Now envision another kind of mind, a dangerous one. A mind that treats discipline not as the objective, but as a tactical device used and discarded when necessary. This mind doesn't rise at 500 a.m. just because it's trending advice. It rises when needed. It rests when recovery sharpens the next attack. It accelerates when speed gives an edge. It slows when silence grants strength. It doesn't force consistency. It adjusts. It recalibrates. It dismantles the routine as soon as the routine becomes a pattern. Because predictability is how rivals track you. And discipline, when worn like armor, becomes your most visible vulnerability. Because then everyone knows your next move. The dangerous man doesn't boast about rigidity. He takes pride in his command of his schedule, his emotions, his decisions. He's not confined by the obligation to be consistent. He has the freedom to pivot mid-conflict without remorse. That's why Machiavelli would say, discipline is for followers. Strategy is for leaders. One obeys orders, the other reshapes the map. Here's how discipline quietly drains your power. First, it teaches obedience, not insight. When you become tethered to routine, you stop asking whether your aim still holds value. You continue simply because that's who I am. You miss the signs that the terrain has changed. You don't pivot. You persist, and persistence on a dead path is just slow motion failure. Second, discipline rewards stamina, not intelligence. Anyone can grind endlessly, but the sharpest minds know when to shift, when to retreat, and when to overhaul the mission entirely. Discipline keeps you in motion. Strategy determines direction. Third, discipline numbs your intuition. You stop trusting your gut. You silence your instincts because they don't align with the plan. You push ahead when you should have paused and missed the signal that could have made you unstoppable. Machiavelli's most dangerous students don't cling to blueprints. They chase results. And they ask one relentless question. Does this serve the end goal? Not, is this the correct routine? Not, did I follow the original plan? But did this move bring me closer to influence, dominance, advantage, or a win? If the answer is no, it's discarded, regardless of how noble it felt, how many days it's been maintained, or how disciplined it made them appear. Because to Machiavelli, virtue without impact is the most tempting trap, and discipline is one of the most deceptive of all. It feels like evolution even while it's keeping you contained. Look around you. The world is full of men who are consistent, diligent, structured, rising at dawn, journaling, reading, eating clean meals. They're ticking all the boxes the system celebrates. And yet they remain unnoticed. Interchangeable, loyal to frameworks that reward compliance, not brilliance. That's not accidental weakness. That's manufactured obedience. The disciplined man fits perfectly into systems of control. He's reliable. He doesn't question. He endures discomfort without resistance. He's measurable, trackable, predictable, which is exactly why Machiavelli would label him the ideal subordinate. Now compare him to the one they can't anticipate. He doesn't repeat the same daily structure. He moves with momentum. He abandons rigidity. He hunts for opportunity gaps. He walks away from plans without remorse when they lose impact. He changes course immediately. And because his actions defy pattern, he can't be contained. His separation from discipline is exactly what keeps him in a position of power. That's the Machiavellian flip. Discipline earns you respect, but only strategy earns fear. And in the power game, respect without fear is worthless. So if every day you wake up just to move through the motions and feel proud of your consistency, if you're staying on a that no longer produces results, if you're clinging to discipline because it shields you from the pain of adapting, then you've already surrendered. Because victory doesn't go to the man who labored the hardest. It goes to the one who studied the board, rewrote the rules, and adjusted first. Discipline doesn't make you a threat, only control does. And control isn't born from pressure. It's born from adaptability, sharpened through strategy. The world applauds the disciplined man, but it fears the one with a tactical mind. Because while the disciplined man is polishing his habits, the strategic man is engineering leverage. He's not striving to be efficient at life. He's shaping life to submit to his will. This is where Machiavelli draws the boundary. He doesn't oppose effort. He doesn't reject structure. But he knows that when structure turns into doctrine, it becomes confinement. So he plays a different game. He sees that every disciplined man eventually becomes captive to his own routine, and captivity, even when productive, is still captivity. Here's how it unfolds. First, you develop a habit. Then that habit fuses with your identity, and before long, your identity becomes your prison. I'm the guy who never skips. I'm the one who always finishes what he starts. I'm the man who pushes through everything. It sounds admirable, but Machiavelli would look you dead in the eye and say, that makes you predictable. That makes you exposed. That makes you mine. Because the moment someone can anticipate your move, you've already lost the edge. And when discipline defines your entire character, your adversaries don't need to confront you. They simply need to let you trap yourself. The Machiavellian mind has no hesitation breaking its own rules. In fact, it treats rules as weapons, momentary, contextual, disposable. In practice, this means if the strategy fails, he abandons it immediately. If the habit stops delivering value, he discards it without pause. If a superior opportunity emerges, he shifts directions instantly and unapologetically. Because he understands one thing: power doesn't go to the most consistent, it belongs to the most adaptable. Let's break it down practically. There are three major zones where discipline seduces men into weakness and what a Machiavellian would do differently. First, the morning routine trap. You wake up early, cold shower, book in hand, journal open, meditation, gym, smoothie. You feel unstoppable. But here's the problem: you didn't think you obeyed. Your entire morning was an exercise in compliance, not calculation. Machiavelli would pose harder questions. Did this routine elevate your strategic position today? Did it sharpen your edge against real-world rivals? Or did it merely make you feel like you were getting somewhere? He doesn't rise to feel busy. He wakes with a single target: control the next pivotal moment. If that means skipping the gym to close a deal, do it. If it means ignoring journaling to prepare for a mental duel, do it. If clarity at 2 p.m. matters more than pride at dawn, sleep in. You're not here to please your planner. You're here to win. Second, the streak addiction. I haven't missed a day in 100 days. I've done this every single day for a year. That's not strength, that's ego disguised as discipline. Machiavelli would call it psychological manipulation against yourself. You've built a cell, one where breaking the streak feels catastrophic. Even if the streak has stopped serving your progress. The disciplined man says, I can't quit now. I've come too far. The strategic man says, if quitting now gives me the edge, I'll stop immediately. Consistency is only powerful when it advances your objective, not when it protects your pride. The second your system stops yielding true gains, you must drop it without hesitation. Every extra day you spend inside a pointless loop is a day your rivals either catch up or surpass you. Third, the myth of finishing what you started. You were taught that quitting is weakness, that you must always see things through. But Machiavelli didn't finish flawed plans, he replaced them. He didn't stay loyal to every commitment. He adjusted the moment a superior opportunity emerged. He didn't push forward to appear consistent. He shifted course to claim victory. That's not inconsistency, that's danger. Because while the disciplined man struggles to drag a broken cart up the hill, the strategist simply switches carts and overtakes him with ease. The world doesn't reward those who finish everything. It honors those who complete the right things. And this is the chasm between the Machiavellian thinker and the obedient mind. The Machiavellian doesn't worship structure, he weaponizes it. He creates systems that yield tangible advantage, not emotional validation. He disciplines himself to walk away from systems the moment they stop delivering. He rehearses breaking his own patterns so no one else can predict him. Discipline isn't the enemy, but blind discipline is mental confinement, especially when you're the one casting the spell on yourself. The man who conditions himself to disrupt his own rhythm at will becomes immune to traps because no one can predict when, where, or how he'll strike. So ask yourself, are you consistent because it still works or because it's familiar? Are you sticking with discipline because it brings progress or because it comforts you with the illusion of control? Are you proud of the time you've devoted to a system, even if that system has stopped creating anything that matters? Because discipline is only powerful when it delivers real outcomes. Otherwise, it's just a self-made prison. That's why Machiavelli never wrote about motivation. He didn't celebrate consistency. He didn't honor obedience. He praised adaptability, foresight, timing, psychological precision, and above all, command. Because in the real war for power, the man who can stick to a plan is useful. But the man who can abandon it at the exact moment it stops working, that man is untouchable. By now, you've grasped what most never will. Blind discipline isn't a superpower. It's theater, a socially approved form of self-restriction. What makes it so tempting is the applause. People see your grind and call you focused. They observe your habits and label you dependable. They admire your routine and assume it makes you strong. But they don't see what you forfeited. They don't see the windows you ignored by refusing to change course. They don't see the leverage you gave up just to keep a streak alive. They don't see the creativity, the precision, the raw instinct you buried beneath the soothing routine of discipline. Machiavelli's brilliance was this: he understood that virtue is often disguised control and discipline. It's the leash you willingly tighten around your own neck. You think it makes you powerful to say, "I always push through." But the strategist asks, push through what and for what purpose? You say, "I never quit." The Machiavellian challenges, is this still worth completing, or are you just scared to look inconsistent? You say, "I'm all in." He replies, perfect. Oh, your enemies know exactly where you'll be. That's the real danger of discipline. It makes you visible, predictable, and easy to track. In combat, the man who follows a pattern is the first to fall. In politics, the predictable man is the easiest to manipulate. In life, predictability never holds power because once everyone knows your next move, you have already lost control of the board. So what does the dangerous man do differently? He learns to weaponize inconsistency, not laziness, not disorder, but calculated unpredictability. One week he's sociable, the next he disappears. One day he's charming, the next ice. One season he charges forward, the next he pulls back to reposition. Why? Because confusion creates advantage. When people can't follow your rhythm, they can't forecast your actions. And when they can't predict you, they begin to treat you with heightened respect. Discipline wins admiration, but unpredictability inspires fear. And in the realm of power, fear will carry you further than applause ever will. Machiavelli believed a man should never reveal his full operating pattern. He must learn to break his own behaviors intentionally so no one observes him long enough to gain certainty. He stays just outside the perimeter of what's expected. If they assume you'll answer quickly, delay. If they anticipate calm, explode. If they expect your presence, vanish. This isn't about being reckless. It's about controlling your presentation even when your presentation is uncertainty itself. Because once you stir confusion, people start watching closer. They hesitate. They second-guess themselves around you. And that hesitation gives you power. Here's the deeper truth. Discipline is about mastery of self, but strategy is about mastery of the environment. Discipline says, "I'll continue no matter the cost." Strategy says, "I'll pause when the gain disappears and strike again when the terrain shifts." Discipline builds grit, strategy builds influence. And in Machiavelli's world, influence always outperforms exertion. Now let's understand why this message makes people uncomfortable. Because most of society's guidance revolves around daily commands: wake early, follow your routine, stay on track, repeat again and again. But this advice wasn't crafted to build sovereigns, it was built to produce followers, compliant doers, predictable workers, individuals trusted not for their vision, but for their execution. But you weren't built to be a cog. You were made to be a weapon, a tactician, a storm, which means you must start dismantling the conditioning that was programmed to domesticate you. This doesn't mean you should embrace disorder. Machiavelli wasn't a preacher of chaos. He preached disruption executed with precision. He never claimed discipline was useless, only that it must serve the mission, not overshadow it. When discipline cultivates mastery, protect it. When it generates leverage, preserve it. But once it becomes predictable, a cage you wear with pride, a ritual you can't question, dismantle it. No habit, no matter how virtuous, is worth your throne. And no system, however optimized, is worth sacrificing your unpredictability. If you aspire to live with Machiavellian sharpness, you must abandon the tools that earned you admiration in order to become the one they cannot overlook. That means shedding routines once they turn stale, releasing discipline when it stops creating force, and disrupting your own rhythm before someone else weaponizes it against you. Discipline might help you raise the fortress, but only strategy ensures you remain in power. Because when the enemy is at your gates, when the script falls apart, when pressure intensifies and routines collapse, the disciplined man says, "This isn't what I planned." But the Machiavellian smirks and says, "Perfect. Now we play by my rules." By now, every belief you held about discipline should be cracked wide open. You were told discipline equals freedom, that it made you strong, that it shaped your destiny. But Machiavelli would argue that only holds true if you're steering the ship. If not, discipline just speeds up your march towards someone else's objective. And that's the final illusion. Society celebrates the man who's dependable, the one who clings to his method, who never wavers. But it never hands power to that man. It hands him recognition, a trophy, a title, a pat on the back, and clears the path for someone more lethal. Someone who defies the script with precision, who acts quietly, adapts shamelessly, and transforms as the game evolves. That man isn't bound by routine. That man is Machiavellian. He doesn't wake to fulfill a checklist, he wakes to read the field, to scan for shifts in power, to sense momentum, to strike where it matters. And when yesterday's strategy no longer applies, he deletes it without remorse. Because he understands one absolute truth: power doesn't reward effort, it rewards timing, vision, and agility. And when discipline becomes dogma, it destroys all three. The truly dangerous man is never defined by his consistency, but by his ability to set fire to his patterns. He uses discipline only when control is essential. He leans into chaos when chaos tilts the battlefield in his favor. He's unreadable because he has trained himself to override his own programming. He doesn't fear breaking pattern, he fears becoming legible. Because once you're predictable, your weaknesses are exposed. And Machiavelli didn't forge legacies by being obvious. Study the history of those who dominated. They didn't merely grind. They didn't grind in the shadows, they maneuvered in silence. They didn't cling to rituals, they broke patterns. They didn't wear consistency as a badge, they wore unpredictability as armor. And those who held too tightly to their routines, they were crushed the moment the environment shifted. Because power doesn't go to the one who simply shows up. It belongs to the one who knows when to vanish, when to shift, when to strike, and when to disappear without a trace. So here's the final test. If someone stripped away your routines, your structure, your daily rituals, would you still move with accuracy, or would you freeze up? Would you scramble? Would you become irrelevant? Because if your power hinges on your structure, then it's not power, it's a rental. And the moment life rattles that framework, you collapse with it. The Machiavellian draws his power from a different source, not from repetition or consistency, but from readiness. He sharpens two tools more than any habit. First, his perception. He scans the landscape, the players, the rules, and he knows exactly which one to follow, which one to break, and when. Second, his detachment from pride, from plans, from the need to appear disciplined. He's not out to impress, only to gain control. That's why he's never stuck. You'll never see him forcing his way through something obsolete. You'll never hear him say, "But I've done this every day for months." No, if it no longer gives him leverage, he drops it, he shifts, he recalibrates. And that's why he wins. So what should you do? You don't need to destroy all your habits, but you must sever the chain that ties them to your identity. Start asking yourself each day, is this practice still generating results? Am I continuing this because it works or because it comforts me? If I had to dismantle this system today, could I rebuild something sharper tomorrow? If the answer is no, then you're not free. You're not the one in command. You're still just a well-trained servant in a world dominated by strategic rulers. Machiavelli's core warning was never about discipline itself. It was about confusing discipline for power. And his deepest insight, that the man who rewrites the rules for himself, not just for others, is the only one who becomes truly untouchable. So stop clinging to consistency as a badge of honor. Start becoming lethal in your ability to shift gears, to restart, to reframe, to win. That isn't discipline, that is power. And if they ask how you did it, don't explain, don't instruct, don't inspire. Just nod and move before they can read your next move. Because while they're still worshiping discipline, you'll be calculating control and you'll already be out of reach.